Ciao, amanti di libri, and welcome to my mid-year wrap-up with my special guest, Moccachinos, also known as his birth name, Mocca. So today we're going to go through the 21 books I've read so far this year, and as you probably saw in the thumbnail, most of them are my physical TBR. I know. Actually crazy that I'm getting through it. Doesn't help that I bought 7 books yesterday. Just add them back on. Anyway, so the format of this video is going to be the books that I read, their rating, and what I thought. I'm going to try and not like fly through them, but brief-ish answers for them all. He's just sitting there. My cat just wanted to be in my presence. I actually thought I read this last year, but I read it in January, and that's Powerless. And then earlier this month, I read Powerful. So I gave Powerless a 4 stars when I first read it in January. And I do that with a lot of first books and fantasy series. I just find that I can't give many 5-star because it's the world building, right? I'm getting used to the characters. Like, I fell in love with Kai and Peyton, don't get me wrong, but I just need to familiarize myself. Whereas this, when I finished it, I gave it 4 stars. Upon reflection, it's a 5. It was the same timeline as Powerless, so I knew what was going on. I already knew Adina, and it broke my heart. So if you are a fantasy reader and you haven't read this, read it. It's good. The next one comes out in 2 days. Wait, in 3 days. Hop on it. And like the chapters are short, the banter is good. You just keep eating up the content until it's gone. And then you sit there in reflection like this. That was me every time. Moving on, I read Bride by Ali Hazelwood. I read this in 2 days. Oh, bless you. I read this in 2 days. I loved it. It made me feel like I was reading Wattpad again. In a good way. In a good way. Yeah. It was funny. It was silly. It was goofy. That was all I needed at the time when I read it. It ticked every box I needed it to tick. I know it's not everyone's cup of tea, but it was mine. It was my cup of tea. Mwah. I gave it 5 stars. I forgot my own format. 3 books in. I also read I Feed Her to the Beast and the Beast Is Me. I don't remember a lot about this book. I think on Goodreads I gave it a 4, but I believe I rated it a 3.75. Basically, she's a ballerina and she makes a deal with a river spirit demon to become the best ballerina. She falls in love with one of the river demon's other, I'm gonna say patron. So he also made a deal with the river demon. They kind of fall in love a little bit. There's murder, there's mystery. She has a bad relationship with her dad. It was a pretty fun book to read. I just can't retain a lot of the information that was in it. And when I was reading it, when it wasn't that action-y sort of book, it was a lot of information dumping, and I just got a little bit tired of it. My cat is now entertaining himself in my bookshelf. We'll continue while he fucks around with all my little trinkets. I also started reading Emily Henry this year, and I started with You and Me on Vacation, and then I've also read Beach Read. We'll start. When I started reading this, I thought, wow, Emily Henry has such a way with words. And then I proceeded to hate every second of it. I hated Poppy so very much. The way Alex was described icked me the fuck out. The only part of this book I retained was that he had back pain and they did the dirty on a veranda. Whereas Beach Read, what the fuck's going on with my hand? Gus Everett, my guy. Love him, love him. Gus carried this book. Love the premise about her dad and Sonia? I believe her name was Sonia. Anyway, loved. Loved January and Gus. This rated at 5 stars. Oh, I rated this 2 stars. 5 stars. I love this book. Can you hear the rain? Moving on. If you can hear the rain, welcome to ASMR. I also read Chai Time in the Cinnamon Gardens. It is about this retirement village house. It's like a very big retirement house that a Sri Lankan family bought when they immigrated from Sri Lanka to Australia, and it's then the generational struggle with racism that their kids and that they are dealing with. So I think her name's Maya. She is the owner of the retirement home, and she writes books for a living, but she has to use an alias to be white passing because she was writing these books in the 70s, I believe, and no one would publish her because she was Sri Lankan. And then her daughter actually takes over the retirement village that Maya is living in. So she's living in the house that she helped renovate and refurbish. It tackles a lot of racism within Australia. It is a very emotionally heavy book. I gave it 5 stars, but fuck man, the amount of like heartache, and I cried reading this book. It is phenomenal. There are sentences that are described described for every immigration group in this book. It also shows the privileges that white Australians get, and I think it's a very important book to read, and it's just heartbreaking. It also explains the civil war within Sri Lanka. It was like an ethnic cleansing. I didn't know that happened. They don't teach you that. I learned a lot reading this book, and I would highly recommend it, especially if you live in Australia. Where were we? Right. I also got into my cowboy romances this year, so I read Done and Dusted and Swift and Saddled within a week. Within a week. I gave both of them 4 stars. They are not perfect by any means. What can I say? I'm a simple woman. Save a horse, ride a cowboy. That's all this is. And I ate it up, devoured it. If Lila Sage releases a 3rd one, it is getting immediately bought. It's going on the shelf. I display these covers because they are gorgeous, by the way. Mwah. The reason that they are 4 stars instead of 5 is I feel like there isn't a lot of character development. I feel like they have their issues and then it goes to riding cowboys. I feel like we could flesh it out a little bit more and then it'd be 5 stars. More cowboys. I read this after I read Done and Dusted and Swift and Saddled. Also got a 4 star. I know that I really enjoyed this. I was kicking my feet. I was blushing. All I can remember is the stands, the bull, the hotel room. But I know I had a good time reading it, so that's why I'm keeping a 4-star rating on this, because I know that I had a great time reading it. And I will be continuing the rest of the Chestnut Springs series because cowboys. Moving on. So Let Them Burn. On Goodreads, I gave this a 4. I'm actually gonna change it to a 3.75. I feel like the subplot of romance was a little unnecessary. As a romantasy reader, I know that's fucking crazy. It came out of nowhere. I love the queer representation in this book. I love the concept that she is gods literally talk to her. They fly big machines to fight dragons. The dragon riders that colonized them. They got their freedom. Her sister bonds a dragon, and by the end of the book, it's just crazy. I think it was too much. I got information overload. I enjoyed reading it, don't get me wrong, but I think there was just too much going on in too little time, and I felt like my brain was fucking spinning. Love the premise. Just got very confused. The 7-Year Slip. Everyone hyped this up so much, and I was like, I'm gonna love this. It was okay. It was alright. I mean, once I knew who he was, I knew it from the start. I loved that he called her Lemon. I loved when they were in the apartment. Like, that was the peak. The peak was in the middle. And it just kind of slowly declined. Like, don't get me wrong, I did enjoy reading it again. I gave it 4 stars, but I just feel like the peak was in the middle and I was just reading it for the sake of finishing it at that point. This one was a little bit disappointing, but not all of them can be winners. We're now kind of getting into the last few. Before we do, we're gonna skip to one I read on my Kindle, which was Manacled. I read volume 1, 2, and 3 all at once. For my very first dark romance, yeah, it was good. Would I have read it on my own? No. I got asked to read it. I'm glad that I read it, but I wouldn't have done it on my own accord. I know it's one of the best Draco and Hermione fanfic. It was just a lot. It was just a lot. And there was like 30 chapters of flashback, but you get glimpses of the flashback before. And I felt like I was rereading and rereading and rereading and rereading and rereading. And then I got to a point where I was back in the present. I was like, where the fuck am I? What's going on? I gave all 3 volumes 4 stars, but upon reflection, I think it's gonna be a 3. I'm so sorry, but it's just not my cup of tea. Anyway, back to physical books, and we're going with The Reappearance of Rachel Price. Loved this. Gave it 4 stars. Holly Jackson knows how to do a plot twist. Like, I think I know where I am, and then I second guess myself, and it turns out that I was right the first time. You know, it's the bit that makes me second guess, where I'm like, do I actually know what's going on? Good Girl's Guide to Murder, incredible, but it's still very good. It got me out of a slump. I've also read Magnolia Parks. I think I gave this 4 stars as well. I don't like to think of myself as a lenient rater, but I pick up books that I think I'm going to like. If you like drama, and if you like Keeping Up with the Kardashians and Love Island, and what's the one that I watch with my girlfriends? Oh, what's it called? Love is Blind. If you like Love is Blind and shit like that, You will like Magnolia Parks. They're in their own fucking bubble of richness, messing up with each other. Good quality goss. I wouldn't recommend acting like them, I wouldn't recommend having relationships like them, but good quality goss to see from the sidelines. Love a good bit of goss. Good book. I understand why a lot of people like it, and I went into it thinking I would hate it, but I actually quite enjoyed it. We are starting to near the end. We're in the final 4 books, and we're gonna go with Ruthless Vows. I rated Ruthless Vows 5 stars, and that's literally just because I love Roman and Iris. I love Divine Rivals. This, loved it. I did talk to a friend who said that she didn't really like it, didn't really follow the plot. And granted, the plot in this is quite all over the place. It is like a tangled up piece of yarn. But did I care? No. Loved it. I followed that yarn through every nook and cranny it was tangled in, and I got to the end victorious. Rebecca Ross slayed with this book. There's really not much else I can say. I'm just a Divine Rivals lover. This year I've also read The Familiar. Wow, this book made me feel like I was insane. I gave it 2 stars. I speak some Italian, and Italian's very close to Spanish, so I figured I wouldn't have a horrible time. I love history as well. This is a historical fantasy. I'm like, right up my alley. No, I think I would have had more fun putting a needle in my brain. The ending, anticlimactic. The man in this book kinda slayed. The main protagonist, oh my god, she shit me. It put me in a slump real bad. Remember when I said the reappearance of Rachel Price brought me out of a slump? This is the cause of the slump. If you love it, good for you. I'm happy that you loved it. I did not. I also read this year Beyond Two Realms, and I actually read the arc of this on my Kindle during Easter. This is the second book to Between Two Realms, which is a fantasy where the main character is from Melbourne, Australia, and she travels, say it with me now, between 2 realms. A lot happens, and I'm not going to spoil it because it is an indie book, and if you want to know, read it. There's references to ACOTAR, there's Fae, but Beyond Two Realms is its duo, and it is what happens at the end of Between Two Realms, which ends on a cliffhanger. You'll never guess what this one's about. We go beyond the 2 realms, the realms being Earth and the Fae realm. We're now in the heavens, people. Greek gods. And it is hefty. I think it's like 400 pages. Yeah, it's 410 pages. There's Fated Mates as well. Oh my god. But I highly recommend this. This series is not perfect, but for a first series, I quite enjoy it. Honestly, support the new up-and-comers, people. You get good quality shit like this. We're going one end of the spectrum to the other. Finally, I have a tabbed version of this behind me, but we're using this one for my example. This book was 623 pages. It ended on a cliffer. Again, that's 2 for 2 now, Rebecca. I gave it 3 stars. I loved Orthwing. I went into this knowing everyone was a little bit disappointed because I waited for my hardcover. I got it. I went in, I went, surely it can't be that disappointing? Surely everyone's just overreacting. No, it was quite underwhelming, and I read 623 pages of that. It's a good setup book. It's good for what it needs to be, but a setup book could have been 200 pages less. If the miscommunication in this book did not exist, it would be 1/3 of the size. But I digress. The next one will be okay. It'll be fine. All is well. I cannot talk about this. It disappointed me beyond repair. I gave it 3 stars because I was still attached to the fact that it was the dragons. The best part of this book were the dragons. If they did not exist, this would definitely be a 2. But they do exist, and they saved it for me. I think that's all of the ones. I think that's all of them. Anyway. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope that your reading goal is within reach. Mine definitely is not. I'm not even in front. I'm actually 3 books behind. Thank you so much for joining me, and arrivederci.